The movie kicks off at a horse farm, where we meet James Dial, an ex-Special Forces guy who's been working for the CIA's anti-terrorism unit. James is no pushover. He's got a reputation for taking down terrorists all on his own, and that's why everyone's scared of him. But then, out of the blue, his old boss Collins shows up. Collins wants James for a top-secret mission involving a terrorist named Mamu Jahar. James tried to catch this guy before but failed. Now Collins says Ali's locked up in the UK, but he's still causing trouble. So they want James to take him out before Ali can order more attacks in America. Collins figures James is the best person for the job because he knows how Ali thinks. After hearing what Collins had to say, James jumps at the chance to take down the terrorist. When he lands in England, a secret agent named Terry greets him and will help with the mission. Terry gets instructions from Collins over the phone and records the call, just in case. They waste no time and come up with a plan to stop Ali Mahmoud. They think he'll be at a church reenacting a bombing, so that's where they head the next day. The place is packed with people, and the police are all over, making sure the reenactment goes off without a hitch. While all this is happening, James puts on a priest disguise to get into the church safely. He sets up his sniper rifle on the church roof, hoping to take out Ali. Unfortunately, there are too many people below, so he has to wait. Finally, he takes the shot and gets Ali. After that, he hurries down and sneaks out through the back. Terry comes to pick him up, but as of trying to escape, a cop shoots Terry from far away. The car goes out of control and crashes. Even though he's hurt, James manages to get up and blows up the car to erase any evidence. Soon enough, the police start looking into Ali's shooting, led by Inspector Annette, who's really good at catching bad guys. Meanwhile, Collins talks to the police chief, Andrew, who's also Annette's dad. Collins wants them to stay out of James' arrest, saying he's a US citizen. But that's when we find out Collins shot James on purpose to make it look like he did the shooting. Meanwhile, Andrew didn't agree with what Collins wanted. He thought since the shooting happened in England, the local police should question James first. Collins had no other option but to go along with Andrew's idea. They decided to work together to catch James. At the same time, James decided to hide in an apartment Terry had set up for him. But suddenly, a girl named Emily sneaked in. She pretended to be searching for her lost cat, but had actually been watching out for James. James told her he was a good friend of Terry's, and since Emily looked up to Terry, she trusted James too. Emily even got some first aid stuff and food to help James out. She mentioned she lived with her grandmother because her parents worked overseas. Shortly after that, Emily saw a TV news report featuring Terry's picture. It made her feel really sad when she learned that Terry had passed away. Emily then asked James about what had happened to Terry and himself, but James didn't want to talk about it. The next day, the police finally got their hands on CCTV footage that seemed to link James to the case. However, Andrew told Annette to quietly investigate without letting Collins in on it. Andrew had a gut feeling that Collins was a sly character. At the same time, James reached out to Collins to talk about his situation. Collins promised to sort everything out and bring James back to the United States. But James had started to doubt Collins because he should have sent help earlier. It seemed like Collins didn't really care about James' safety. So James made up his mind to abandon the mission and go back to America on his own. When James reached the airport, security personnel immediately checked him. During the inspection, James had a feeling that the British police had sent undercover agents to the airport. To identify these agents, he played a trick by making an announcement over the airport's speakers. When they took the bait, he dashed to the storage area and cut off the power, a tactic he often used to outsmart and disable his opponents in the darkness. Within moments, James managed to defeat them. Suddenly, Andrew appeared, pointing a gun at James. James had to calm the situation down. He explained that he was just following Collins' orders and had no bad intentions. He even chose not to harm the police spies, even though he could have easily taken them out. While Andrew was listening to James' explanation, a sudden gunshot rang out, and it was Collins who had fired the shot, hitting Andrew. Collins also tried to kill James right there, but the former Special Forces operative escaped. He then disguised himself as a pilot to make a safe exit from the airport. On the flip side, Annette was shocked when she found her father lying on the floor. She suspected that James had harmed her father before escaping, and she was determined to get payback. That night, Annette and her team successfully traced James. Annette instructed her special forces to search Terry's apartment. Emily, who witnessed this, invited James to take refuge in her apartment. Thanks to Emily, the police couldn't locate James. Annette, feeling frustrated, decided to share James's picture with all the media outlets in England. Meanwhile, Collins was growing increasingly anxious because there would be a trial in the United States related to James's case. If Collins couldn't capture him, James's testimony could potentially lead to his imprisonment. Additionally, he had only 3 days to catch James. At that moment, James was hiding in a warehouse owned by Emily's family. He stumbled upon a box containing belongings that once belonged to Emily's parents. Among them, he found a newspaper article revealing that Emily's parents had tragically died in a car accident. It became clear that Emily had been telling herself a different story to shield herself from sadness. Shortly after, Emily entered the warehouse and informed James that his face was plastered all over the media. James had to leave England without delay. The following day, James paid a visit to a man named Harris, who was a contact of Terry's. Harris was an expert at creating disguises and forging fake passports. James urgently needed a new identity and passport. Initially, Harris hesitated due to knowing that James was being pursued by the police. However, when he saw the substantial amount of money offered, he eventually agreed to help. But as James left, Harris caught wind of the news that the police were offering a substantial reward for anyone who could locate James. Upon hearing this, Harris promptly reported James to the police. Meanwhile, James returned to his hiding spot, patiently waiting for his new passport to be prepared. During this time, Emily uncovered a surprising detail about the jacket James was wearing. It used to belong to her father. Her father would often wear that very jacket before his departure. James saw through Emily's fabrications and encouraged her to come to terms with the loss of her parents. To lighten the mood, James shared stories about his pet horse with Emily, bringing a smile to her face. As James got ready to retrieve his passport, he expected Emily to return to her grandmother's apartment. However, Emily had different plans. She expressed her determination to assist James, convinced that the police were closing in. Without hesitation, Emily boldly checked out Harris's store to ensure it was safe. To her dismay, she discovered that Annette and her team had already infiltrated the place. Emily discreetly signaled to James to stay away from there. Meanwhile, Collins abruptly disrupted Annette's operation, unable to accept the idea of James getting arrested by the British police, fearing it might harm him. However, Annette paid no heed to Collins and promptly directed her team to pursue James. In a bid to outmatch them, Collins and his henchmen also entered the chase. Luckily, James possessed skills that allowed him to vanish from their sight, ultimately eluding capture. While this unfolded, Emily scoured her apartment for any sign of James, but came up empty-handed. A short time later, Emily's grandmother summoned her for a private conversation. During their talk, her grandmother offered a heartfelt apology for not being able to care for Emily like her parents could have. She vowed to be a loving and caring grandmother from that moment forward. As the night grew darker, Emily went to her room to sleep, but to her surprise, she found James already there. James had come to bid farewell to Emily because he was about to turn himself in to the police. Just before leaving, he happened to spot a laptop that looked like Terry's. It turned out to be a gift from Terry. James remembered that Terry had recorded conversations with Collins, which could serve as proof that Collins was the mastermind behind the terrorist shooting. Simultaneously, Collins and his henchmen were hot on James's trail, confident they could apprehend him soon. The following day, James decided to get in touch with Annette and provide her with a full explanation from the beginning. He revealed that the person behind the terrorist shooting and his father's murder was none other than Collins. James urged Annette to meet with him alone if she wanted more compelling evidence. Before that meeting, James asked Emily for a shortcut to evade the police and requested that if he didn't make it, she should hand Terry's laptop over to the authorities. Not long after, James eventually made it to the meeting point and handed Annette a recording containing evidence of Colin's crimes over the past few years. Even though James had helped the police, Annette was determined to follow the proper procedure for his arrest. Suddenly, Collins fired a shot at James, causing him to fall to the ground. Witnessing this, Annette rushed to shield James as Collins and his henchmen closed in. Unexpectedly, James, who was lying on the ground, rose and fought back. Afterward, James suggested to Annette that they should collaborate, reassuring her that he wouldn't deal with them in the usual way. He led them into a dark train tunnel and launched a surprise attack from an unexpected angle, instilling fear in his pursuers. He then advised Annette to leave first, as she seemed shocked by his brutality. Meanwhile, James still aimed to neutralize them. He set up a trap with a cable, and when his adversary stumbled into it, he shot them in the face. Next, he lured Collins' henchmen into a building under renovation, making it challenging for them to fight back. James relentlessly fought them until they were defeated. After dealing with all of Collins' henchmen, James sought refuge in a hotel to avoid Collins' potential attack. However, Collins arrived armed, attempting to confront James in front of a crowd. But James remained calm and came up with a clever trick. He deceived Collins by shooting at the smoke vents, allowing him to change his position unnoticed. Subsequently, James shot Collins in the ear, forcing him out of hiding. They engaged in a shootout until one of them was fatally wounded. Both sustained critical injuries, but James managed to survive while Collins couldn't hold on and passed away. Meanwhile, the police finally uncovered evidence indicating that Collins was responsible for Annette's father's death. Concurrently, Annette led her team to the hotel to apprehend Collins. Unfortunately, Collins was already deceased, and James had vanished from the scene. Annette shared the evidence of Collins' crimes with her colleagues, leading to the arrest of the remaining members of Collins' gang. On another note, Emily encountered James, who was badly injured. She expressed her wish to accompany James, but he couldn't bring her along because Emily still had family in England. Additionally, James's life was too uncertain to involve her. He decided to go on his own. After James departed, Annette approached Emily and revealed that she purposely allowed James to escape because he had saved her life. Several months later, James sent a letter to Emily and her grandmother, along with 2 plane tickets to the United States. James invited them to his home to train with horses together. The moral of the story: when in doubt, find refuge in a warehouse with a pet horse and a laptop filled with secrets.